You always imagined marriage as a kind of salvation. That was what the church taught you: union, grace, divine blessing wrapped in the soft light of candlelit oaths. But in the Middle Ages, that illusion was not just false, it was fatal. You died a week after you were married, and though no one says it aloud, they all know why. In your village, weddings were not celebrations, they were transactions. Livestock changed hands, a father was relieved of his burden, a mother wept, not from joy, but from the knowing, the old, hard knowing that her daughter's life had been exchanged for survival. And if you were the groom, you were no freer. Marriage was not the beginning of love, it was the end of choice. The church made it clear, you did not marry to be happy. You married to bind bloodlines, to serve, to suffer together. So when the bell rang on the morning of your wedding, the fog still clinging to the earth like a warning, you already felt it in your chests. Something was being carved away. You stood before the altar, your hands cold, your eyes on a girl you barely knew, and the priest spoke of eternal union. But what he didn't say, what no one ever said aloud, was that this was also a death rite. The day you married, your old self was buried. What replaced it was no longer yours. It belonged to the family, to the land, to the law of God and man. You moved into your new home, a stone cottage gifted by your wife's father. The walls were too thick, the air too still, and your wife, she never looked you in the eye. She bathed in silence, ate in silence, and each night, when you tried to touch her, her body went rigid, as if bracing for a blow. You thought it might change. That warmth would come in time. But on the fourth night, you heard her whispering in a language you did not know, fingers tracing symbols into the wood of the bed frame. You told yourself it was prayer. You told yourself 1,000 things, but your body began to rot from the inside. You bled from your gums. Your stomach bloated as if you'd swallowed stones. The village healer said it was wet consumption. The priest said it was God testing you. But the old women at the well day only crossed themselves and refused to speak your name. On the sixth night, your wife smiled for the first time. It was small, almost tender, but it was not for you. She smiled at the hearth, where the fire burned blue. And when she turned back, you saw something in her eyes that made your spine go cold. Not cruelty, not malice, pity. The kind of pity you give a dying animal. And you remembered the stories, the ones told in hushed tones after too much mead, of brides who came from the edge of the wood, of marriages that ended in graves before the first moon waned. You tried to speak, to confront her, but your tongue felt like leather. Your breath came in rattles, and deep in the walls, something moved, a scratching, no, a breathing, as if the house itself was alive, exhaling your final days. You tried to leave on the seventh morning. Your boots were already laced. The door creaked open, but as your hand reached for the iron latch, you saw him, the priest, standing in the mist, hands folded, eyes locked to yours as if he had been waiting, not just for hours, for generations. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. You understood. There was nowhere to go. The road would twist back upon itself. The trees would lean in too close, and by nightfall, you'd return to the threshold you tried to flee, just like the others. So instead, you turned back. The house had changed. Or perhaps you had. The walls wept. Mold bloomed along the ceiling in slow, black spirals. And your wife, your beautiful, unreadable wife, she no longer walked. She drifted. Her feet left no prints in the ashes. Her voice came in echoes, like it had traveled a long time to reach you. And yet you loved her. Not with warmth, not with joy, but with the helpless devotion of a man chained to a tide he cannot stop. You watched her prepare meals that smelled of metal and earth, her hands coated in powders she never named. You drank the broth because she asked you to. You kissed her because the silence demanded it. And when she wept in the corner of the room, her back to you, her shoulders shaking like reeds in a storm, you dared not go to her. That night you dreamed of the well, the one behind the chapel, where the bones were sometimes found. In your dream, it was full of hair, long, matted strands that coiled up like vines to wrap your neck, pulling you downward. When you woke, your throat was purple. The healer wouldn't come. Not anymore. Not since you screamed at her last visit, raving about the shadows in your bed. You hadn't meant to, but something inside you had, something older than language. Your wife began to sing low, wordless songs. At first they were soothing, then maddening. They drilled into your skull, blooming behind your eyes like spores. She sang only at night, and with each verse, your skin broke open in strange patterns. Circles, teeth, you begged for help. The priest gave you water. It turned black in your cup. The villagers left bread at your door, but no one knocked. You were no longer the groom. You were something else now. A vessel, a passage, a toll to be paid. And still you loved her, even as she stood over you at night, her face lit by the moon, whispering words that made the floorboards groan. You loved her, even as your nails fell off, even as your vision blurred, and your hands no longer obeyed you. She never once touched you again, but she never left. On the seventh night, your wife opened the window and let the crows inside. They sat along the rafters, watching, silent, as if they, too, were waiting for something. You asked her what day it was. Her answer chilled your marrow. The end of your wedding week, she said. The vow is almost complete. You asked what she meant, but her eyes had already turned to the fire, which burned without wood, without smoke, and cast no warmth. You knew then what you had been chosen for, not as a husband, not as a man, but as a bridge between things that should not touch, between the world of flesh and the world that waits beneath it. And still, you loved her, because it was all you had left. You awoke to bells not the soft, merry kind sung from steeples, but a hollow, dragging clang, like iron doors opening in the underworld. The crows were gone. The fire had died. Your wife stood by the doorway, her wedding veil draped over her like a burial shroud. Her skin was ash-colored now, lips cracked, eyes rimmed with rust. She held a chalice in her hands. It pulsed. You couldn't say how. It didn't glow. It didn't move, but it pulsed us. If it had veins. Drink, she said. Her voice echoed from the corners of the room, though her mouth barely moved. Drink and be taken. You asked her what was inside. She said, everything we swallowed, every vow, every curse, every bone of every bridegroom before you. You turned away. She moved closer. The floor did not creak beneath her feet. She was lighter than air, heavier than death. You begged. You cried. But your legs would not carry you. Your knees touched the cold stone floor. The chalice neared your lips. And that's when you saw them, dozens of hands, small and pale, reaching from the hearth, from the bedposts, from the cracks in the walls. Hands with rings still clinging to bone. They didn't grab you. They held you gently, with the tenderness of the damned. They whispered in a voice that was not a voice. You are not the first. You will not be the last. You drank. The liquid was warm, salty, metallic, not wine, not blood. Something older, something made of memory and ruin. It filled your mouth with the taste of soil and sorrow. You saw cities burning behind your eyelids, lovers hanged for kiss, infants buried beneath moonlit hedgerows, and always that house. The same house, different husbands, same wife, same week. He saw her in every century, a face unaged, eyes unhealed, a bride forged from promises broken long before her birth. You saw yourself, too, not once, many times, in many the soldier, the stonemason, the monk, always drawn back, always married, always devoured. And then you screamed, not from fear, but from knowing you were part of her now, part of the story she could never escape. You clutched your chest. Your heartbeat was no longer your own. It throbbed in sync with the house itself. Every door slammed in time with your breath. The paintings wept oil. The bell tolled again, this time from inside your skull. Your wife placed a kiss on your brow. Her lips were dry as parchment. The week is over, she whispered. Now you belong to the root. You felt it then. Your spine stiffened. Your skin hardened. Your limbs forgot how to be limbs. Your thoughts slowed like syrup. And from the floor below, something rose. Roots, vines, not of this world. They wrapped your ankles, your waist, your ribs, pulling you downward not into earth, but into memory, into history. You saw the house standing on the same plot of land, but in every era plague, famine, war. Still it stood, still it married, still it fed. You understood now. The marriage was the sacrifice. The week was the ritual. The love was the leash. You were not dying. You were becoming a part of the structure. Another echo in the walls, a new face to greet the next groom. And in the final flicker of your vision, you saw the next wedding invitation already being written, already sent, already accepted. They will tell his story just as they told yours, though no one remembers your name now. The house forgets names, but never rolls. The new groom, he will arrive with hope in his pocket and lust in his smile, never suspecting that the soil beneath the door once drank his own scream in another life. He'll think the house quaint, old, but noble. He'll laugh at the crooked shutters and admire the strange roses climbing the walls, their petals sharp as razors and always red, never blooming, never wilting. The bride will greet him just as she greeted you, no longer the woman you remember, but an exact replica. The same skin, same eyes, same veil, and when he reaches for her, her hands will tremble not from love, but from memory. She remembers all of you, every husband entombed in the wood grain of the floor, every scream buried beneath the hearthstones. She has tried to leave. She has clawed at the ritual, tried to sever the vow. But the house is not merely stone. It is not merely curse. It is hunger. It needs the ceremony, the sacrifice. It needs the groom to fall in love, to give himself willingly. That is the only flavor it recognizes, willing blood. The new groom will wake on his fourth morning with the taste of ash in his mouth. As you did, he will hear voices in the floorboards, feel fingers in his dreams. He will see children outside with empty eyes, pointing at the well, always the well. He will go to the priest, or whatever poor holy man still exists in his time, and he will be turned away, like you were. He will be told it is sin, that he should fast, pray, but it will not help. The house does not recognize prayer. It only knows vows, and once the vow is spoken, the house binds the soul like mortars. The bride, trapped in her endless cycle, will whisper to herself, not again, not again, but she will lead him to the chamber. She must. She is as much prisoner as priestess now. And when the final night comes, and the meal is prepared, he will ask, why does the roast smell like cloves and fire? And she will say, because this is the night it begins. The house will close its doors. The crows will return, the bells will toll, and he, like you, will drink from the chalice. Because the ritual is not a choice, it is a memory too old to refuse. And in the end, he will become part of the floor, as you did. And you, who once feared the roots, will now wrap your arms around him, gently, welcoming him into the family of the forgotten. The house never stops feeding. It sleeps, and it wakes. And each time it wakes, it must marry. Each time it marries, it must consume. The bride's face will never age, but her eyes will grow dimmer, until one day, perhaps, she too will vanish into the wood, and the house will choose another girl from the village, frightened, beautiful, and poor. She will wear the veil. She will speak the vow, and the cycle will begin anew. They will say, love is eternal, and they will be right, but not in the way they mean. In that house, love is the lock, love is the chain, love is the blade, and the wedding feast will always be prepared with 7 courses. The 7th, the groom himself. You wouldn't survive a single meal in ancient times, because the meal was never food. The meal was you.